From Pretoria to Parliament, we hear from two Fani's in the SAPS this Tuesday. One, a Sergeant Fani in Corsy, who claims that National Deputy Top Cop Shadrack Sabir did accept gifts from alleged criminal Vusi Musi Kat Matlala.
His only real breakthrough has been obviously deciding between himself and Sabir and who was going to take the fall on this. He's decided that he's not going to support Sabir's version, and he hasn't backed him up on the Impalas. Sabir came to the commission and said, no, yes, I sent the pin for my house in March 2024. And Corsy was supposed to help me find a buck to serve as a mate for another buck. But I didn't want Impalas, so I immediately called him and told him. And then Corsy comes to the commission and says, that never happened. He's not telling the truth. And Corsy was pivotal to his defense. His defense is blown out of the water.
And to the national top cop, Fani Masemola, who insists to MPs that he does not target people and does his job.
They are obviously he's not going to know everything in the police. He's at the top, So, but there's something he should have, Like, for instance, they asked him, because Sabir apparently is quite an entertainer and likes to have parties at his house. And then one time Kat Matlala was there. So the evidence leaders asked Masemola if he were at the parties, and he said yes. And he was Kat Matlala there? And he said, I don't know Kat Matlala. He knows him now, he says. This guy has a criminal record length of my arm.
Let journalists Karyn and Jan Gerber bring you up to speed with the two inquiries into claims that criminals have captured the state justice system. Later in our trending topic, a violent convict who escaped a KwaZulu-Natal prison is now back in leg irons. And finally, apartheid's draconian censorship laws set in with On This Day in South African history.
New episodes of The Lead air Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m.
In Rauby's Pointless Braai quiz for today, who's the coach responsible for ensuring that the Blitzboks are crowned World Sevens champions? I'll give you the answer a little later in the show.
This is The Lead, and this is the South African story with your host, Graeme Robenheimer.
In our top story today, we're getting a double header of sorts. The Madlanga Commission's proceedings, as well as Parliament's ad-hoc committee hearings regarding claims that criminals have captured the criminal justice system. And today we begin with specialist legal journalist Karyn monitoring testimony as we speak from Central Pretoria, currently out on a break. Karyn, our episode from last week has done exceptionally well. The listeners want more of you.
Oh, well, I'm very gratified by that. And it's thanks to their support that we can keep doing interesting, great journalism on this history-shifting commission.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now we saw that the previously anonymous witness F, as we understood it, is actually, in fact, Sergeant Fani in Corsy, who it appears, according to the evidence before us, has been somewhat of a key communications conduit, that's the claim, between Deputy National Top Cop Shadrack Sabir as well as Vusi Musi Kat Matlala. But Corsy has denied a few claims. It's rather this he said, she said between himself and the Deputy National Top Cop Sabir, and one being that Sabir claims he did not take a rather over-the-top gift of impalas. We've often heard about this troop of impalas from the cat, but Corsy says, hey, his experience was otherwise.
This is what is so important. If I was the National Prosecuting Authority and I was thinking about someone who I could potentially flip to serve as a Section 204 witness, someone who gives honest evidence in exchange for some kind of immunity deal or a lesser sentence, he would be the person that I would look at. Why? Because he's very fundamentally connected on his own version, and of course that will bring him, into the firm realm of credibility attacks with the so-called members of the Big Five cartel. He says that, Mr. Msibi, the taxi boss, late taxi boss, who was the alleged leader, Mswazi, the leader of the Big Five cartel, was like a father figure to him. He also has fundamental connections with Steve Mutsumi, who of course is another alleged connection to all of this and was very close to Mswazi. He was the conduit by which Madlanga was communicating with Shabiri. It's very evident from the WhatsApp communication that as soon as Shabiri or Madlanga communicated with him, he would forward that communication on to them. And it's more than that, because we know from the recordings that were made of Madlanga when he was, raided for that, the kidnapping of Jerry Bashogha on the 6th of December 2024. Tragically, Bashogha never found those harrowing videos of him, which continue to sort of resurface on the internet, talking of the torture that he had endured in those times of captivity. He then, it is fundamentally this question of how Corsy then communicates with Madlanga, with all these pivotal figures, on behalf or, seemingly to and from these central police officers. And it's not just Shabiri, it's also the head of organized crime, Richard Shabiri, as well. And he also gets, we know from that recording that's made of Madlanga that he references the fact that he gave Corsy this credit card, which of course Corsy says, I did have it, but I accidentally found it on Msibi's jet ski. And he utilizes that on his own version to the police to make cash payments to Shabiri. And we know that cash payments are withdrawn, but then used on Nkosi's version for so-called quote-unquote jet ski or boat repairs. Now, if he changes his story on that, and he says, for instance, as is what we know the commission is exploring, was this card the mechanism of corruption to very police officers? Then the story changes quite pivotally. But unfortunately for Corsy, he continues to persist in providing evidence that is manifestly improbable to the commission. His only real breakthrough has been obviously deciding between himself and Shabiri and who was going to take the fall on this. He's decided that he's not going to support Sabir's version, and he hasn't backed him up on the Impalas. Shabiri came to the commission and said, no, yes, I sent the pin for my house in March 2024. And Corsy was supposed to help me find a buck to serve as a mate for another buck, but I didn't want Impalas, so I immediately called him and told him at my lunch break when I saw all of this that, I don't want Impalas, they die.
That's a bit
comedic. Get anything from a service provider, Cat Madlanga, even though Madlanga wasn't a service provider at the time, and then Corsy comes to the commission and says that never happened. He's not telling the truth. And Corsy was pivotal to his defense. His defense is blown out of the water.
Karyn, it sounds like a Faulty Towers episode, and not a good one at that. Let's bring in Richard Shabiri here, because Friday's evidence was rather pivotal, and I think it was kind of sort of overshadowed by the weekend to a certain degree. Here's the suspended SAPS organised crime head, who's insisted that he's not a bad cop, he's not a bad apple, but, he also agrees and he admits that he took a 70,000 Rand car loan from the cat, and he knew full well who the cat was.
And it's worse than that, because he sort of talks about the fact that he knew about Jeff Wix's journalism on the Tembisa hospital looting. At that stage, Jeff had already exposed the so-called blue light scandal that implicates Julius Mkhwanazi, another person who admits getting about 70,000 Rand from Cat Madlanga, as a friend, not, to assist him and to pay for various funeral costs and other things that appear to not have any evidence to substantiate them, and appear not to have been declared to the city of Ekurhuleni. But he admits that he knew, and he also, what was pivotal here and why this commission is so important is that his initial version on this was that he was in desperate need. His son had had a car accident in sort of early September 2024. He was overseas. He finds out about it, and he's in a desperate situation because the insurance has really repudiated the claim. What's going to happen? And the commission then produces evidence from his bank statement saying, but you had more than enough money to fund this. And your son, who was employed and an adult man, also had, an excess of money that it could have funded it. And he then changes his story and says, well, I will spend my money how I like, quote unquote. And, I wanted to build a wall. I wanted to build a fence. So the version keeps changing. And of course, the commission then says, based on what Madlanga again told the police in these recorded conversations, that Madlanga said that money was intended for alcohol for a Thanksgiving celebration. It was taking place literally 2 days after this money was given placed in the account of Shabiri's son.
Sure.
So it's all looking very, very dire for all of these figures. And of course, Madlanga putting it explicitly to Shabiri and saying, I don't think that this was alone. And I think the only reason you paid Kat Madlanga back was because he was raided in the search for Jerry Bashorga on the 6th of December. And you knew that. And you thought, I have to distance myself from this person. It wasn't a loan. You weren't intending to pay it back, but you realized the heat was on. The cops are onto this guy. I need to distance myself.
It really is. It's like such a mess, man. Let's go back to Sergeant Fani and Corsy, and you were supposed to return to the hot seat today, but he often needs to go to the toilet, as it seems, and apparently wasn't unaware as to how much time had to be set aside for him to give his version of events, and also claimed at one point that, Karyn, and tell me more about this, that apparently senior ANC leadership figures, although obviously unnamed, tried to persuade him otherwise to rather remain secret at this commission?
Well, essentially he was saying that he wanted to preserve his anonymity, which was somewhat of a joke because we all knew who Fani and Corsy was, even under the veil of Witness F, because of course he was named by Crime Intelligence head, Dumisani Kumalo, when he gave that, highly publicized evidence about old Fani and Corsy rocking up at Katiso Malefe's house just a few days before he's arrested for the murder of Armand Swat, that tragic mistaken identity killing on the 17th of April 2024, and leaves, just about 9 minutes later carrying a white bag. So we all knew who he was because his own lawyer sort of, inadvertently revealed who he was during his application to essentially testify remotely and not have his face shown. So, it wasn't a big surprise. He was named by Sabia. And then he, as part of his attempt to remain a secret witness, quote unquote, he then says that, since he's given evidence, he's been told by various people who he doesn't name that he should not resume his testimony. And Madlanga just says, look, this is not a basis to preserve your anonymity. And in any event, it's pointless because everyone knows who you are. So, we're not going to do that any further.
Sure. Okay. What else can we expect from the commission before we jet off to Parliament?
Well, remarkable evidence coming out this morning about how Fani and Corsy, who was, believed, sort of hinted by the police to have been the person who tipped Kat Madlanga off about the raid on his home in connection with Bashorga's kidnapping, cheerfully admitting today that he had been on the phone with Kat Madlanga when he was raided. And said, no, he was trying to get Kat Madlanga to come in to give an interview to the police about Bashorga's kidnapping at the time. There was nothing untoward about this. He wasn't tipping him off. But in the day before, he had called Kat Madlanga at least 4 different times. And he's saying, no, this was just me trying to get him to, to come and give an interview with the police about the Jerry Bashorga kidnapping. Tragically, and I think this is something we need to come home to again and again and again, Richard Shabiri was responsible for the investigation into the murder of Klutter Murray and his son Thomas. This Jerry Bashorga has not been found. There are real human beings whose lives were lost in terrible traumatic circumstances, whose family members have been denied justice, seemingly because the police responsible for those cases were too busy fraternizing with alleged criminals who are facing very serious charges to actually do the hard yards and get these cases solved. So Jerry Bashorga is just one of those examples. of those people who have been denied justice. And hopefully at some point there are some answers as to what happened to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Karyn, I really do appreciate it. I'll let you know what the National Top Cop states over to our parliamentarians, as of course it's the second last day of that ad hoc committee meeting, which is run parallel to the Madlanga Commission. I'm sure you've been also sort of keeping half an eye on that somewhat.
Absolutely. And I must say, like, Jan Gerber, our parliamentary colleague, does an absolutely brilliant live update on all of that evidence. And I don't know how he manages to do it, because in some cases we know it ends at 2:00 in the morning, but consistently up-to-date reporting. If you want to know what's going on, follow that live and continue to follow News 24's journalism.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Rowenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072-562-3179.
Moving to Parliament now, it's the second last day of the inquiry, and we're hearing from current National Top Cop Fani Masemola with our senior parliamentary correspondent Jan Gerber been listening in. Jan, lucky to have you on the show. You just missed Karyn. Unfortunately, your guys' times weren't lining up today.
Yeah, the evidence leaders just finished with Masemola. It will be over to the MPs now. Masemola basically just confirmed what he said before. I think that's pretty much the purpose of calling him back. There were some allegations put to him that basically a former general who alleged that he pressurized her to stop investigations. He dismissed it. He very much continued with the narrative that the disbandment of the PKTT was because of the raid on Kat Matlala's house and Katie Mlefi's arrest, and that it's like to scupper the investigations into the so-called Big Five. He couldn't provide much evidence to support that theory. He didn't want to say who the members of the Big Five are, apart from Matlala and Mlefi.
Yeah, because apparently that's still being investigated?
So he says, yes.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, a lot of this we've heard before. Masemola is sort of like adamant that the now suspended police minister, Senzo Mchunu, didn't take him into his confidence, that they didn't consult in the sort of weeks and months before the disbanding of the PKTT. And that's really why this entire ad hoc committee was put together. Really, it's one of the central nodes of discussion, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said just now, that that Masemola, Mkhunazi and Kumalo is like using this disbandment of the PKTT as a central theme in the broader allegations that the minister is protecting corruption. Basically, that's what it boils down to. From the evidence we've heard so far in this committee, the way the minister went about disbanding the PKTT is not the way to do it, and he haven't provided proper answers to that. So yeah, I mean it's a problem. I'm pretty sure the committee will make recommendations about that against him.
One name that's been dominating both the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee as well as the Madlanga Commission separately in Central Pretoria has been Deputy National Top Cop Shadrack Sibier's name's come up in both of this in recent days, more specifically. And Masemola has been facing tough questions over his relationship with regards to Sibier and once that disbandment operative comes into play.
Yeah, so the way Masemola told it, and it is also pretty much... It gels with other testimony we've heard, is that Sibier was very much pushing for the immediate disbandment of the PKTT once Mchunu gave his directive. Just a reminder, that directive to disband the PKTT came on 31 December 2024, which is a very odd date to issue directives for police ministers. Yeah,
you'd argue no one's really working at that time.
To say it must be disbanded immediately. So Masemola's approach was to basically slow walk that and to phase out the PKTT, while Sibier wanted to do it immediately, like Mchunu said. But the allegation is that Sibier is also part of this bigger thing to scupper the investigations in Gauteng.
Yeah. And Nhlanhla Mkhunazi, of course, the very much outspoken KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner and head of the PKTT, who's due to be the beginning and the end of all of this, is due back before the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee sitting this Wednesday. Masemola admits that he met with Mkonazi before the bombshell press conference that set all of this in motion. It wasn't clandestine as it was alleged to have been, and that he authorized the conference, but he didn't expect Mkonazi to go sort of so full-blown about things, right?
Yeah, so the way Masemola told it is like Mkonazi only wanted to address the PKTT issue, the disbandment of that at the press conference, which set this whole thing in motion. But then I think Masemola used to it. He went overboard, and he basically made all these allegations, which was what Masemola wanted to present to Ramaphosa first before they went public. So because he just gave Ramaphosa like a overview type briefing, and Ramaphosa asked for a report when he get back from Brazil.
Right. In the meantime, we're hearing that security clearance and the vetting and lifestyle audits of senior SAPS figures, senior members of the criminal justice system, that process is sort of underway as we speak, right?
Yeah.
Which is good news, at least.
Well, the question is why is it only being done now?
True.
Because the bottom line is that all these things that we've heard about the past year is happening because of the people that were appointed in the top echelons of the police.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the president himself missed this deadline to answer in written form.
Yes.
The answers to some of the questions that have already been put to him in regards to the testimony, or at least the claims heard in Parliament, and he missed that deadline.
Yeah. So what happened was in January, the committee had a meeting where they discussed who they're going to call. The ANC said, no, you can't call the president. He's the president. He can't be treated the same as other witnesses, which is rubbish. So they said they're going to send him questions. The first deadline was 20 February. So the presidency wrote to the committee and asked for an extension until 16 March yesterday, which they granted. And I think that's above board. Then yesterday afternoon, they got a letter from the presidency, so not asking for an extension, just informing the committee that they will respond today. So the MKP, who was one of the parties who was insistent that Ramaphosa appear, likened him to Paul O'Sullivan, which upset the ANC MPs very much.
Yeah.
But I think for once the MKP had a point. But
sure. Look, it's going to be interesting to see the president's replies to all the various, because we haven't heard anything from him.
Yeah. And I mean, like today, he's been mentioned, he knew about these allegations before it went public. He knew, Masemola spoke about the PKTT's disbandment with him, like
at the Waterkloof Air Force Base.
And in February 2025, if I recall correctly. So he's been involved, as he should be. He's the president, Also, he appointed people like Chelly, kept him in there for years as police minister. He appointed Masemola, etc. So he can't just like, oh no, he's the president, we shouldn't question him.
What did Masemola say about this claim that Bheki Cele, although he's not part of the SAPS anymore, still wants to have a hand in sort of events or matters pertaining to the criminal justice system?
Yeah.
This is this like sort of general allegation.
He says he doesn't know what ruling from the grave means, and he doesn't speak to Chelly that often, and if people want to make that allegation, they must provide dates and times where he and Chelly met.
Yeah, but Masemola has been sort of like very much at pains as well throughout proceedings. And throughout this entire saga, really, as being someone who's limited in his knowledge of certain things.
Yeah.
I get the impression. And he very much wants to, keep his job, obviously, at the end of the day. And here he comes out and he says, I'm not the type of person that's going to go out and target anybody else unnecessarily, right?
Yeah, but I mean, who's going to admit to that? So,
sure. What's your impression been?
I don't know. I mean, he's not a very forceful personality, like say a Bheki Cele, like a big business Konazi. He's like a very much more gentler type of soft-spoken type of person who doesn't come across as like the type of guy who would go after people, but that could just be appearances. I don't know him that well. I mean, I don't know him at all actually. So I just have this impression of what I've seen in Parliament over the years, and so I haven't been very impressed with him as a national commissioner. I mean, the way he responded back in the day to the Thabo Bester inquiry, that was appalling. It was just basically, what can we do? They are obviously like, he's not going to know everything in the police. He's like at the top, So, but there's something he should have known. Like, for instance, they asked him, because Shabiri apparently is quite an entertainer and likes to have parties at his house. And then one time, Kat Madlanga was there. So the evidence leaders asked well, if he were at the parties, and he said yes. And he like, was Kat Madlanga there? And he said, I don't know Kat Madlanga. He knows him now, he says. This guy has like a criminal record the length of my arm, and he, big contract with the police. So it's
perhaps the national top cop should have known.
Yeah, I would prefer him to have known things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's end here. I know you're moch. You're tired. It's wrapping up this week. We've got one more word from obviously the MPs and Mkonazi himself. And then what happens after that?
Well, the committee will first have to compile its report. The backroom staff, the parliamentary staff, would have gone through the evidence, and they've already started working on this report. Then the committee will basically debate. It will, do they change this paragraph, add this, take that out, that type of thing. And then they will debate, come to recommendations. So then they will, if they make findings against a person, they will send it to that person and give them a chance to respond. And then the report will be put to the House, to the National Assembly. They have to hand in the report by the end of the month. I think it's going to be a few more late nights. But,
super tight deadlines. And then, obviously that comes through a very important legislative channel of South Africa, which is, our parliament. But can it be used in concert with whatever the Madlanga Commission sort of comes up with? I would like to think it could, right?
In a way, yes. I don't think it will lead, Parliament can't tell the police go and prosecute that guy, or the NPA. They can't make that type of recommendation. So people must, keep that in mind. But they can obviously make a finding like this guy needs to be, investigated further. I'm sure they will make a lot of findings like that. They must also look at things like how do you improve the system. So they might recommend legislative changes. They should probably. So it should be seen in conjunction with the Madlanga report. Yes, when that will come. I think they've got a longer deadline.
Yeah, August.
Yeah, and also there's a bit more. The parliamentary recommendations can carry a bit more weight. If I can, in the sense that the government can't just completely ignore it. If Ramaphosa gets the Madlanga Commission's report, because it will go to him first, and he decides he's not going to do anything with it, then that's where it ends. There will be court cases, etc. But for the most part, it doesn't have. It's not binding,
Yes, 100%. Whereas in Parliament, you have all these various political parties that have backed it.
Yeah, and I mean, it will become a parliamentary resolution. So. Also, a lot of the committee will refer a lot of things to the other, the Portfolio Committee on Police and Justice, and probably the Correctional Services as well. So this won't be the last we hear of this whole matter. It's not, there will be a report and then that's it. These things will carry on, and I think there will also be political fallout. I think Chunu's political career is over.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think there will also have to be a shake-up in the police. I mean, we can't carry on with the current crop, it's just it's insane. But in any case,
not when senior SAPS figures allegedly are receiving thousands and millions of left, right, and centre. It's crazy. Keeping up with all the headlines and keeping up with this huge web of who said what has been crazy. We're living through historical times in the South African context. Jan, baie dankie. Ek waardeer dit. Have a fantastic time off, and I'm sure we'll chat again.
Yes.
Trending topic.
To our trending topic, and he's been serving a life term for serious crimes, including attempted murder, rape, and housebreaking. And when he joined the prison farm team as a cleaner at Siefontein Correctional Centre in KwaZulu-Natal, convict Thulani Gcaleka may have spotted his escape. And that he did earlier in February, on the run for much of the past more than a month or so, until Gcaleka was tracked to Gauteng and then recaptured this Tuesday. Now back in custody, Gcaleka faces further criminal charges brought against him. Correctional Services spokesperson Singobako Nxumalo says an internal disciplinary inquiry around how Gcaleka was allowed to escape is now underway as well.
The National Commissioner, Mr. Makhoti Samuel Tohale, had established a dedicated track entrusting team within his office to focus on high-profile and high-risk escapees. Therefore, the rearrest of offender Gcaleka is a direct result of these strengthened efforts. Offender Thulan Gcaleka, he will be reclassified to a higher security category and be transferred to a maximum security correctional facility.
Thabo Bester really set the precedent, hey? What say you? Drop us a comment below.
And finally,
on this day now in South African history, that's the 17th of March 1950, and a special thanks to South African History Online for keeping us updated on these historical events so far back in time. Well, on this very day, the apartheid government passed the Suppression of Communism Act. It is one of the most notorious security laws from this era. It gave the state sweeping powers to silence and ban organizations and heavily restrict what the media could report on at the time. Now, the law was simply used to outlaw the Communist Party of SA, although this very same party had already voted to disband earlier that year in an attempt to protect its members as well as its assets. Though this crackdown did not stop there, the act was later expanded to target anyone who had ever been called or claimed to have been a communist. And by 1952, prominent figures including Sam Khan and Fred Carnison were expelled from public office. This was all part of a broader campaign to crush political opposition, then under the guise of anti-communism. In Rauby's Pointless Braai quiz today, we asked who's the coach responsible for ensuring the Blitzboks have been crowned World Sevens champions. That's Philip Snyman. And so sorry to Fiji, it seems like they're just not able to clinch it in the end. What a fantastic run of games that we've been having, and it's just like unbelievable, otherworldly, some would say. Just to take stock for the moment and realize that the Springboks are playing the best rugby and the Blitzboks following suit too. South African rugby is just on a whole other level at the moment, and we really do need to stop and celebrate and enjoy this moment. We may argue that it might not be forever. And if you haven't seen the headlines just yet, well, it's all confirmed, signed, sealed and delivered. President Cyril Ramaphosa will be addressing News 24's very special On the Record Summit this year. That's this Thursday and Friday at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. Of course, as I said in yesterday's episode, this year's theme is how do we create 5 million jobs in 10 years? And as the presidency points out, the On the Record Summit follows a 9-month research project undertaken by News 24 and the Africa Centre, and that's to consult around 60 influential South Africans across academia, business and civil society on tangible solutions that could be implemented to create 5 million jobs in the next decade. The debate is happening, and it's all going to be centered around News 24's On the Record Summit this Thursday and Friday. Of course, the lead will be there to bring you the highlights from both of those days. Expect our coverage to come out a little bit earlier in the day, and that's going to be around your mid-afternoons of both Thursday and Friday. We'll wrap all the best, the juiciest nuggets from this debate. How do we get South Africa moving into a space that creates wealth for everyone on an inclusive front? That really is where the conversation is right now. Well, until then, my name's Graeme, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll have the lead.